Okay, so how's it going, guys? This is Ryo Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. I can't find my super clamp to clamp my mic, so I have my mic on my left hand and my script on my smartphone on my right. My hands are really occupied right now, but I'll try my best to make this meaningful for you guys. So this is sort of like my second series talking about the Voigtlander lenses for the Fujifilm system. In my first video, or a long time ago, I basically made a video on my first Voigtlander lens, which was the 35mm f1.2 Nokton, meant for the Fujifilm's X mount. And I basically used that lens when my Canadian friend from Toronto visited me, and I basically shot with that lens because it is the king of the hills and shooting indoor dark environments like the team lab. And this is sort of like a follow-up video to that. This is basically going to be the second lens in the series, which is the Ultron 27mm f2. And long story short, a lot of people who are seeing this video might be new to my channel, so this is sort of going to be a recap and also giving you guys background information about the company and also the lens manufacturer of Voigtlander. If you guys do not know, Voigtlander is a company based in Europe, in Austria actually, and they were founded like 100 and 200 years ago, if I'm right. However, financial turmoils and economic hardship hit that company. It was actually sold to various companies such as Rollei, and I can't recall. However, it ended up in the hands of the Japanese manufacturer of Cosina, which you guys probably do know. They make a lot of exquisite lenses made in Japan, and they basically purchased the Voigtlander branding and also the patents that Voigtlander accomplished over the course of the century. And Cosina fully can utilize all the patents that Voigtlander has made in the past, such as, you guys probably have guessed it, the names such as Ultron, Nokton, Color Scopar. Each and every lens has its own design, and basically Cosina is rebranding those lenses and sort of like tweaking a little bit for the mirrorless market. And because due to the fact that they are really highly reputable both in Japan and outside Japan as a third-party manufacturer, and also for people who shoot regularly with film, I thought this brand in particular shares that characteristics of shooting with a film camera. And yes, all their Voigtlander's lenses are fully manual, no autofocus. Sorry, modern people, you have to live with it. But yeah, like I said, they're all manually, you have to manually focus with your hand. And also each and every lens have its like dedicated aperture like ring, which is clickable, meaning that it is sort of like centered towards photography, while declickable apertures are more meant for video. But I went a little bit off topic, but this is the video on the Ultron 27mm f2. Please note, as an additional information for you guys, Voigtlander's lenses, they make for various mounts such as Nikon, Canon, Sony, and for Fujifilm, but the majority of their lenses, when I looked at their website, do not overlap. There are a couple lenses that overlap between a couple of lens mounts. However, Fujifilm specifically, the lenses that are created towards the X mount, you cannot find them in the Nikon, Canon, or the Sony, like what you call mounts, which is rather intriguing, which also makes it really exquisite. Interestingly enough, as of 2024, Voigtlander has roughly 7 lenses up for the X mount, and this is basically the second lens, which is the Ultron 27mm f2. And the main reason I purchased this lens in particular is this is one of the Voigtlander's smallest lens up on their arsenal, including, in addition to that, the 18mm Color Scopar is another tiny lens, which has a name of pancake. Actually, pancake lenses are basically lenses that are almost as the size of a pancake, not fully blown, but it is small, compact, lightweight, making it, I guess, worthy for a travel companion or people who rigorously shoot in the street. And I basically wanted to try this lens out. Just a comparison with 35mm f1.2 Nokton, it is definitely really small. And I have to mention that the filter thread is unusual 43mm, and because I shoot mostly with Fujifilm cameras and lenses, 43 is, I think, doesn't exist on the Fujifilm lineup, if I'm right. Their smallest is 46mm, which is similar or exactly the same as a Nokton, the 35mm f1.2. But if you're a rigorous filter user, such as if you're a videographer or that needs to use ND filters or CPL polarizing filters, you need to get 43. So that's like one area to point out. And also, like I said, because this lens is tiny, it is actually really hard to focus, as in because the dimension is so small and the focus area, what I call the barrel of the focus, is like so narrow. It's really hard to directly change the focus. However, Voigtlander in this lens, they basically added a roulette, or aka I guess an area where the lens barrel sticks out. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but you can basically use your, I guess, middle finger, or your fourth finger to basically rotate the focus ring around. Basically included that into this package. And as for the aperturing, like I said, it is clickable, meaning that it makes a clicking noise when you basically turn it 1/3 of a stop. And that is really a pleasure if you're doing photography, because I actually used a lens that had declickable aperture, and the worst thing of those types of, the worst thing that could happen is you're shooting and you don't know that the aperture changed. If you hit someone, or if you like bang your camera against your shoulder or your waist, that aperture can change suddenly without notice. While clickable like apertures, even if you hit something, it's hardly gonna move from f2 to f2.8, which means that you can basically shoot on site without being like, I guess, intrigued by other types of like events and stuff like that. So that's like one of the great things about having clickable apertures. Okay, one area to point out is the focal length, and I forgot to say this in the beginning of the video, but 27mm is equivalent to 40mm on the full frame camera spectrum. And you have to understand that Fujifilm's whole lineup of cameras, the X series of cameras, are all APS-C sensor, meaning that the focal length that's written on every single lens, you have to multiply that by 1.5 to get the full frame equivalent. So 27mm becomes 40mm. So some people might like this focal length of 40mm. Some people might love the 50mm more, but this is more like a personal preference kind of thing. And I basically attached this 27mm f2 Voigtlander Ultron to my X-T5, and I basically brought this camera to Okamoto Taro's Memorial Museum, actually located in Omotesando, roughly 10 minutes or so. And I basically shot with this camera setup in Provia to give you guys a gist of what it can produce. And also background information, Okamoto Taro is basically a famous artist who, it's hard to explain. He's a wild artist who, his notable like artwork is definitely the Osaka Banpaku, aka Expo 1970s sun god. Actually, every Japanese people know about that sculpture. It's still being sort of like exhibited in Osaka, if I'm right. And he also has various types of artwork, really distinctive. Actually, you can find his style, you can understand that it is his work, because he has this weird monstrous type of like color usage and I guess sculpting kind of like it's hard to really explain, but his like memorial sort of like exhibition was actually throughout the year being presented in Omotesando, and I never had an opportunity to shoot around that area, so I thought I should bring this camera and just shoot that museum because photography is welcome. So yeah, basically brought this setup to his sort of like memorial museum. So basically, I shot around that museum, and also I have to mention that his famous artwork or art piece is actually being displayed in Shibuya Station, like for a really long time. I don't know how long it's been presented, but the Myth of Tomorrow's what you call artwork is presented. It's like hung against a wall through a bypass of the Keio line. So if you have an opportunity to be around in Shibuya, you can basically see that for free actually. So it's under construction right now, Shibuya Station. So part you can basically view, but part you can't. So yeah, went a little bit off topic. But after shooting with the Voigtlander 27mm f2 without touching the brightness or any kind of like, colors or anything, everything shot in Provia, I have to admit that this small setup is really nice to have, because this is like probably the lightest you can get. Fujifilm has a 27mm f2.8, but that's 2.8 with autofocus, and if I'm right, that lens is a little bit heavier than the Voigtlander counterparts and a little bit tad bigger because it has to incorporate the autofocus motors and stuff like that. This lens was a pleasure to like shoot, just because it is really small, and just because my hand is small enough to turn the aperture ring and also the focus wheel without any issues. I mean, it was actually a joy to use, and it had this like really distinctive, because I never shot with a pancake lens, this got me into that, the wet, like what you call muddy area of, oh, this is what a pancake lens is, this is what a street lens is. And honestly, people don't notice you if you have this setup. Walking around, the camera's black, the lens is black, it's like really slim profile, lightweight, and this like slim and lightweight profile will get even smaller if you combine it with a smaller camera. As of 2024, you guys probably have guessed it, Fujifilm has a XM5, which they recently released, the smallest X series camera that weighs 340 grams. This weighs like 500 grams, so 500 grams. Smartphones typically 200 grams, so if you deduct a smartphone from the XT5, you get the XM5, and if you match that camera with the 27mm f2 from Voigtlander Cosina, you will get a super small package. And also, not to mention the XS20, if I'm right, that's also a small camera to use. As for the image quality, I'm not a sort of like a super nerdy person that likes to talk about image quality or anything, because I basically say it looks good or it doesn't look good. But I have to admit, this lens does really well, and because it's f2 and because I'm used to shooting with 35mm f1.2 from the Voigtlander, the Nokton series, I thought indoors f2 it would be like meh, kind of, but this proved me really wrong. Even if I shoot wide open at f2, if I get the focus right, it looks really nice, especially the outer focus areas. And I shot a little bit of video to get, and with the cats like floating around. In the background there was LEDs, so you can basically get a gist of what the outer focus would look like if there's like a light source behind and in front, and it just looks dang good in my opinion. And this is just a pancake lens, and normally pancake lenses, I've shot once with a Canon like 40mm pancake lens, and I did not get these types of image like a long time ago. So this lens does share a little bit of, I should say, it's sort of like a vintage lens in a way. It might be the coatings, but I can't say much because I don't know much about how they coat. Voigtlander Cosina coats their like lenses, but it does look really nice. And compared to like manufacturers that I've talked in the past, such as TT Artisans, I talked about not a pancake lens, but a 50mm equivalent lens, and I said that lens had lots of haziness, a little murkiness going on, but this lens in particular does not have any of those what we call super murky, like haziness going on in the image. It looks clean, sharp, and also not too sharp as a modern lens such as like Sigma, if you have ever used like their art series, their contemporary series, but it's like feels really right in my opinion. And I'm kind of like regret shooting with Provia with this like setup. I should have shot with a sort of like a more vintage like film simulation, such as like classic Chrome or Realia Ace, or maybe nostalgic Neg. I think this lens would really look fantastic in my opinion. And like I said, the outer focus, I shot this with various locations. I brought this lens to Shimokitazawa, to the turkey coffee shop. There's only one turkey coffee shop in Japan and Tokyo actually, and that's Shimokitazawa. And I basically brought this lens set up, and I basically asked politely if I can shoot a couple of photos, sort of like sample photos, and he said, as you wish. And it was actually a joy to use. And during my visit, I was basically the only person visiting super early in the morning. And the outer focus, it's not like super outer focus. It's hard to explain. Like if you shoot like f1.2 on a Nokton, there are those scenarios where you think, I think I blurred it too much, you know. But this lens, on the other hand, it doesn't tell you that you blurred it too much, because f2 for some people, I mean, that blurred bokiness doesn't seem that apparent. For some people it might look apparent, but in my case it is just about right. And I kind of should shoot my Nokton 35mm f1.2 around f2 or f2.8, because for the Ultron, f2, f2.8 seems to be the sweet spot, in f4 too. It's just a great lens to use actually. This lens, on the other hand, the sweet spot is f2 to f4 if I'm right. Shooting above f5.6 to f8, you get like bland results if I'm right. Not too spectacular, but this f2, f2.8, the sweet spot, I think it provides a really nice result in my mind. Stick in a lot of photos for you guys as a reference. And also, not to mention, I actually shot this at night, and this is another characteristics of Voigtlander Cosina lenses, especially both the Nokton and the Ultron, is that they both have this specific type of starburst effect, and it's sort of similar to, in a way, Cinestill's like halation. People love halations, people don't like halations. Voigtlander Cosina's like lenses for manual lenses for digital, on the other hand, instead of halations, what you get is starburst effects, and this might, for some people, love it or hate it, unfortunately, but I personally love starburst effects. And the more like modern lenses made by Sigma and made by Tamron and various other companies that are optically really perfect, in my opinion, like the recent lenses, try to like eliminate those starburst effects, those halations and stuff like that. But because this, what we call the original patent, has existed for a pretty long time, it does have a sort of like a vintage look to the images, and it's really hard to say across screen, so I'll stick in a lot of photos for you guys, but I just enjoy shooting it also at night. And like I said, because the setup is really lightweight, I can basically sort of like travel it with it more. And obviously, like I said, this lens is meant for street like shooters, and also I guess people who just want to run and gun and just shoot like really in a fast-paced environment. It's sort of like a street camera lens's dream. But because I'm not a street photographer, I cannot say much. But experiencing using this lens, it was a really nice experience. Okay, so that's basically my video of talking about the Voigtlander 27mm f2, and this is going to be, I'm gonna digress a little bit unfortunately, but I think a lot of people have the same or similar mentality. Is it worth owning a 40mm and also the 50mm? Because that's in the scenario that I am in currently. I own the 35mm f1.2, and which is equivalent to 50mm, and this lens, which is 27mm f2, which is equivalent to 40mm. And the problem here arises is, I mean, the focal length is so similar, and for some people 40mm might be different, significantly different than 50mm, but in my case I love to shoot with 50mm focal length more than 40, unfortunately. And this is sort of like that forked road. Should I keep it or should I sell it, you know? And the reason why this series of videos exist is that also educate people that if this lens is not the answer to what you need, you can basically, and this is also the great thing about Voigtlander lenses, is that the price of Voigtlander lenses don't go down as significant as Fujifilm's lenses. Sorry, Fujifilm, because if you look at the course of the years, Fujifilm lenses actually goes down significantly. I'm talking about the what we call the flagship lenses, and this is similar to Nikon, Canon, and Sony's flagship lenses. Over like 5 years or so, the prices go down significantly. However, when you look at Voigtlander lenses, they do not go down as much in terms of value. So this is the series that, and also the reason why I'm making this video, is that you could, in a way, shell out $500 for just one Voigtlander lens. And this is like my style of like photography, sort of like a, not a side business or anything, but like a side work, is that I basically use that money to purchase something knowing that I know that it's not going to fulfill my need. However, that money that I spent becomes an experience. So that $500 purchasing this lens, I purchased this used, not new. Don't buy new, actually. But if this lens doesn't match my need, I could basically sell this lens without losing that much money, and basically use that money that I made from selling this lens and just purchasing a different lens, and maybe that lens might fulfill my need. And like I said, this lens is a 40mm. I own a 50mm, so I'm sort of like questioning myself, do I really need this lens? Maybe not. So in the end, probably, highly likely, I might sell this lens and then make my third video of the third Voigtlander lens, which is probably going to be the 18mm f2.8 color scope lens, which I am eyeing on, which is equivalent to 28mm focal length. And as a combination, 28mm and 50mm makes sense, much more sense than owning 40 and 50. So that lens, that video might come probably next year or so. But in the meantime, I can basically use that or this lens and shoot more and get a great idea and experience from just shooting with this specific lens setup, you know, and just enjoy the Voigtlander's Ultron series. So yeah, that's basically my video of talking about the Voigtlander lens, and also sort of like giving my subscribers and my followers sort of like a little bit of education, because a portion of your money should be used to invest into something that you know it might not work well. However, you can always sell it or resell it, you know, in the secondhand market without losing that much like money. And that experience becomes sort of like a lifetime experience. And it was actually a joy using this lens, Voigtlander Ultron 27mm f2. And yeah, these types of lenses actually, this is going to be sort of like another advice actually, but when I sell camera lenses, I actually bring this to Fuji Camera, which is located in Nakano. They actually purchase it at a higher price than Map Camera, unfortunately. Sorry, Map Camera. But yeah, that's actually something I know that should be spread among people outside of Japan. Fuji Camera actually purchases lenses at the highest price, especially for the digital. Film cameras, I can't say much because I never sold film cameras there. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative. Hopefully this video is not too long. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out. And my left hand is tired. Oh, my arm. Holding this camera.